my precious. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is The Advocate, and today I'm an advocate for The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, a book review. Written by J.R.R. Tolkien and released on November 11, 1954, The Two Towers serves as the follow-up to The Fellowship of the Ring and the second book in Tolkien's world-famous Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, trilogy is the operative word here, as although this series does consist of 3 individual books, Tolkien actually originally envisioned Lord of the Rings as one cohesive narrative. And now that I've read 2 out of the 3 books in this trilogy, I can definitely see why. But before we delve into why, definitely feel free to give this video a like, comment, and consider subscribing to my channel as it really does help me out. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate all the support. Now, if you've not read a Lord of the Rings book before, but consider yourself an experienced fantasy reader, I would actually encourage you to check out the unified singular volume edition of Lord of the Rings as opposed to the 3 separate entries. Partially because I think reading this story within one binding actually makes for a more seamless reading experience, but the other part of it is that you also avoid ending each book on a somewhat awkward place. The cutoff points for each of these 3 books are somewhat peculiar, especially when compared to their movie counterparts, and I really do think this series works better as one story as opposed to 3. To better illustrate my point, let's look at the previous book in Fellowship of the Ring. That book ends with Frodo and Sam going off on their own after they decide to split from the Fellowship. It's an admirable ending, but feels like more of a stopgap as opposed to an actual conclusion to a book. However, in the Fellowship movie, the movie ends after our characters say a tragic farewell to Boromir. The latter has a bit more of an oomph factor to it, and I think does a better job at making Fellowship stand on its own. The same goes for this book. Although I very much like the last chapter in Two Towers and find it to be a decent conclusion, it feels less like an ending and more like an interlude. Now yes, book and movie are 2 entirely different mediums and each access this story in their own unique way, but I prefer how the movies are structured from beginning to end as they make each entry feel distinct. Now on the topic of story structure, the Two Towers book actually takes a different approach to its story when compared to its cinematic counterpart. Rather than bouncing back and forth between different groups of characters, each half of this book is actually dedicated to following a specific group of characters. This book's first half predominantly follows Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, in addition to Merry and Pippin, as they navigate through their own specific ordeals, whilst the second half follows specifically Frodo and Sam as they continue their walk to Mount Mordor. Although neither story interacts, the events from each half are chronologically congruent with each other. It's an interesting way to tell a story, and certainly different from the singular timeline of events in Fellowship of the Ring, but I think it works well for the purposes of this book. Specifically because as we're reading through Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's perspective, we're left in the dark about what's going on with Frodo and Sam, and it creates a little bit of suspense as we are unsure of what's going on in their story and we kind of want to know if they're okay. Additionally, both halves of the story actually contrast quite nicely with each other. The first half, called Book 3 here, delves into some more action set pieces and Rohan lore, whilst the second half, aka Book 4, delves into a more personal, almost introspective journey following Frodo and Sam. Each story contributes a variety feel to the book, and I think it makes for a more well-rounded reading experience. Now with that said, although I very much enjoyed this story and actually liked it better than Fellowship of the Ring, I do think a book like this would likely not work in today's literary market. It may sound sacrilegious, especially considering how world-renowned Tolkien's work is. However, as I'm reading this story, I can't help but come to the conclusion that the slower, wandering character-building scenes in the second half of this book would likely not fly well with today's impatient, smartphone-addicted, goldfish attention span market. Without delving too deeply into spoilers, there's quite a bit of slow walking, introspection, resting around campfires within Frodo and Sam's perspective, which tend to stagnate the story just a little bit. Now, personally, I don't mind this too much, as Sam and Frodo's friendship is still front and center within this book, and the challenges they face along the way do help in developing their characters. However, their perspective does ask for patience from the reader, And if you're a relatively new reader who claims Lord of the Rings as your first ever foray into fantasy, then I can definitely see some weariness here within this part of the story. That being said, where there definitely won't be any weariness is with regards to Tolkien's prose. Once again, Tolkien puts his Oxford-level mastery of the English language to full use here by immersing us in some beautifully descriptive language, illustrating the natural world of Middle-earth so well. Whether Tolkien is describing glacial formations or the sun peeking through a dense fog, the man knows how to bring a vivid picture to a reader's mind. But where I was most impressed with Tolkien's vivid talents is actually with regards to his detailing of this world's botany. A close friend of mine tasked me with paying special close attention to the flora described within each chapter, and I can definitely see why. Tolkien the Mad Lad has done quite a bit of research in not only finding ways to closely match the ecology of different regions of Middle-earth to real-life biomes in our real world, but also to allow them to make sense within the geographical context of the world of Middle-earth. In a 2017 book titled Flora of Middle-earth, botanist Walter S. Judd and artist Graham A. Judd take a close look at the plants documented within Lord of the Rings. And within that book, they pay specific attention to a chapter detailing Sam and Frodo's wandering adventure through the shrubbery of Ithilien. By examining the plants described within this chapter, our botanist authors can not only surmise that Tolkien took inspiration from Ithilien from the Mediterranean region, but that he also did so with an excruciatingly correct level of detail. This, in addition to Tolkien cultivating all the plants within Ithilien's southern climate, as per Ithilien's location on Middle-earth's map, which matches Greece, is just all kinds of awesome. So yeah, Tolkien's a linguist and his talents make for a descriptively beautiful story. I'm not breaking any new ground here. But I think it is a testament to Tolkien's talents that despite these books being 70 plus years old, the language within them still holds up wonderfully to this day. However, what we can break down into is spoilers! If you haven't read The Two Towers or watched the Lord of the Rings movies, skip ahead to the end of this video to hear my final thoughts on this book. Otherwise, stick around and let's get spoilery. So as I mentioned previously, this book splits our time amongst 3 different groups of characters as opposed to the singular cast we followed in Fellowship. And of the 3 camps, most readers tend to gear more towards Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's story, as their plotline delves into more action and also sees the epic return of Gandalf. And sure, there's a lot to love about their side of the story, as their perspective includes Gandalf the White, battle with the orcs, their confrontation with Saruman, and of course the wonderfully epic Battle of Helm's Deep. However, although these are all great moments and certainly put this book over the top, I actually prefer the more somber character work present within Frodo and Sam's story as opposed to the more action-heavy first half. We actually delve into a pretty personal story here as both Frodo and Sam begin to come to their wits' end as they embark through the mountains in hopes of finally disposing of this horrendous ring. So much so that both hobbits actually undergo a character transformation as they gradually cast away their naivete from the previous book and come to the grips with the weight of their mission. This character change is significantly compounded by not only the journey they're on, but also by the physical toll inflicted by the ring as well. Throughout the book, a more brazen Frodo finds himself increasingly drawn into a sort of dazed state as the ring slowly saps his strength. However, despite his weakened state, Frodo maintains an inspiring iron will and courageously forges on with his mission to destroy the ring. Many readers and moviegoers rag on Frodo's character for being too passive, but out of everyone in the series, he is the one who carries the greatest burden. Despite his tremendous suffering, he has no qualms with dying to oneself if it means serving the greater good and saving so many people in the process. Similarly, although his circumstances are different given he's not the ring bearer, Samwise steps up majorly as a character as he's the only one to truly look out for Frodo, and also the only one to correctly mistrust Gollum for his ill intentions. "Look here," Sam whispered to Frodo not too softly. He did not really care whether Gollum heard him or not. "We've got to get some sleep, but not both together with that hungry villain nigh, promise or no promise. Smeagol or Gollum, he won't change his habits in a hurry, I'll warrant. You go to sleep, Mr. Frodo, and I'll call you when I can't keep my eyelids propped up." He's a very perceptive character, and although Gollum in the end does manage to successfully trap both Sam and Frodo within Shelob's lair, despite Sam's correct apprehensions about Gollum, it's Sam who comes in clutch with the magic-infused sting to impale Shelob and save Frodo. Once again proving that no matter one's social standing, True courage and loyalty can come from anywhere, and we should all strive to be more like Sam. There's a lot more to love about the Two Towers book and what makes it great, but it's the themes of friendship that Tolkien handles with a mature level of tact that really stand out to me and make this one of the best stories I've ever read in fantasy. So all in all, a combination of Tolkien's beautiful prose and his deftly written themes make the Two Towers book a very great read. And even though I already know what's going to happen in the next book, much thanks to the Return of the King movie, I'm still excited to see where we go from here in the literary version of that book. So look forward to that. But until then, thank you so much for watching another Advocate book review video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. The Advocate, out.